Good morning and welcome to Connection. Pastor DE is in class this morning, so we will start off with our morning blessing. Spirit of truth, we thank you for this new day in which we are filled with gratitude. We are grateful for another day to live out our lives in freedom, in happiness, and in joy. We give thanks to you for both the tangible and intangible daily bread that you provide for us. We live and move and have our being in the perfect, unconditional love that lives in our heart. We are grateful now for that which we have already received and are grateful in advance for more than we can ask or think coming into our lives on a daily basis. We commit ourselves today and every day this year to get happy, stay happy, and be happy, and see what happens. In the name and nature of the Christ, amen, and so it is. Okay, we are going to have a little bit of fun today with our quotes because I feel like we all need a good laugh right about now. I know I do. I read something the other day that someone had posted on Facebook, and I actually reposted it on my page because I hadn't laughed that hard in a long time. It was apparently a series of tweets by a man in response to the news story that Del Curry is divorcing his wife of 30 plus years. And the reason I said it that way, and rather than they are divorcing, is because that was the way it was worded in the tweet. So no hate mail from Del Curry fans out there, please. Now, when I read it, I had absolutely no idea who Del Curry was. I had to look him up. I do not follow sports at all, so I was clueless. But I found out that he is a former NBA player himself, as well as the father of two NBA players named Seth and Steph. Now, I had heard of Steph Curry, but that was the extent of my knowledge about the Curry family. Anyway, that is all beside the point. The point is that the news broke that he and his wife were divorcing, and in response, a random man sent him some sage advice via Twitter about re-entering the single life after 30 years of marriage. That is absolutely hilarious. I won't read all the tweets. I didn't even understand all of the tweets. But here are some that I did understand and that can be repeated in a church setting. And I'm going to read them exactly how he worded them, although I am sure I will not do it justice, because they are priceless. He says, Bud, ... addressing Mr. Curry, let me tell you something. You don't want to be out here. You think you want to be out here because you're not out here. When you get out here, you ain't going to want to be out here no more. Last time you was out here was different. You think it's something better. I come to let you know, the best you're going to get is what you already got. I own, and he spelled it, he didn't spell it I don't, he spelled it I-O-N, like I don't know why you don't want to do the work. You're going to come out here, and you ain't going to like it. 14 minutes being out here, you're going to start saying, these females, if you can make it work, do so. You don't want to be out here. This was my favorite one. You don't want to be out here learning TikTok dances and falling off milk crates. Then he put in all caps with the little emoji of the man screaming, love the wife of your youth. He said, and then he says, do you like turmeric? With 4 question marks. Charcoal ice cream? 4 more question marks. You better learn to like it. They not eating butter pecan no more. Bluebell ain't out here. You better go listen to Lemonade and pray about it, which for those of you who don't know is the album Beyonce recorded that a lot of people think is about when Jay-Z cheated on her. So he says, you better go listen to Lemonade and pray about it. You don't have the cholesterol to be out here. Do you know what a group chat is? You better learn, because you finna be the subject. These people are 60% crab leg, 30% iced coffee, and 10% vape pen. Beloved, whatever went wrong, go back and make it right. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to prepare you. These people are children of Rihanna, born in the fires of chaos. You ready to leave your wife of 30 years till you wake up and your body is surrounded by rose quartz and moon water. My message is simple, Del Curry. Go home and be a family man. So there it is, a very funny commentary on the modern day dating scene from someone who is very concerned about Del Curry's future. Now, the way that fits into the teaching today, believe it or not, is that I got my title from it, which is Born in the Fires of Chaos. We've talked a bit before about the literal original meaning of the word chaos as opposed to what it has come to mean. And I just want to remind you of that and its relation to another concept we've talked about pretty frequently, the void. The Greek word for void, as in the beginning the earth was formless and was in the beginning the earth was void and formless. The Greek word for that is chaos. Now, in modern terms, chaos is typically seen as a whole lot of something. For instance, people often refer to a chaotic mess as a situation where there's a lot going on. When we hear the word chaos, it leads us to think of an overwhelming amount of things going on at the same time. But the actual meaning of the word is closer to the concept of emptiness or a vast void. So what is chaos? Is it a lot of things all jumbled together at the same time, or is it nothing? Or is it both at the same time? I quoted in an earlier teaching this: we must embrace this paradox that emptiness contains the expanse of creation within its nothingness. When we retreat into nothingness, we find ourselves in the place of limitless possibility, and we can pull from it, this space of nothingness, this void, whatever we require, because in nothingness, there is no expectation to limit us. Okay, so these concepts of chaos and the void, where everything exists in its potential form, are closely linked. And we're going to explore that link a little further today, as well as shift into the modern meaning of the word and talk about some strategies we can employ to get ourselves out of the fires of chaos when we feel, in the modern sense, that that's where we are, which involves working with the void. So first, let's define chaos as it was meant by our dear random tweeter when he described these females who he had encountered out there in the dating world as being born in the fires of chaos. This definition of chaos is complete disorder and confusion, a total lack of organization. Similar words to describe this state of being would be scattered, fragmented, turmoil, havoc, frenzy, and upheaval. And when, for whatever reason, you find yourself in a situation where you feel this way, there is a strong need for things to somehow be brought back into order as quickly as possible, because that's not a very comfortable state to be in. Many times, the first place we look to find this order that we're seeking is to someone or something outside ourselves. We want to talk to somebody, a friend, a spouse, a pastor, a counselor, a doctor, and get some advice from them. Or we go to a book, perhaps the Bible, or some other text where we think we can find some answers. Or nowadays we go online to see if any of the other 8 million strangers out there have any information of value to offer us. Or we appeal to a higher power. We pray to God. But sometimes in our panicked state, we forget that God is not some entity that is external to us, but rather exists within us as the Christ consciousness. So we must remember to go within. And just doing that one thing, changing our focus from out there to in here, is a huge step in bringing chaos back into order. I don't remember what teaching it was, but I do remember reading to you something once where a woman described it like this. She said, when you are emotionally spiraling out of control, your tendency is to go up and out. But what is most helpful in that situation is to instead go in and down. Now, it's funny how, without even realizing it sometimes, the very language we use tells us everything we need to know. We talk about people being riled up when they're in an agitated state. That's a very Southern term to use. Or another one that was popular in the 60s, we talked about people being hopped up. Have you ever heard anybody saying, he's just hopped up on drugs? We describe people as being wound up or jacked up. So what is the remedy to that? If you come across someone who is raging and hysterical and emotionally out of control, what kind of language do you use? Calm down. Cool down. Sit down. Take a breath that implies in. You'll often ask them to rein it in. So our language gives us clues about what we should do, the direction we should move in when we feel like we are in the fires of chaos, in the modern sense of the word. The answer is not to go up and out, which may be our first instinct, but rather to go within and down. So that's a good way to think about it, isn't it? I love to have visual little representations of these things. So in those times, we need to remember to come back to our own I am, and also that God is not up and out and separate from us, and that's where but he's within. So that's where we have to go to find him, in the form of our higher self, or that part of us that is divine. I want to read from a piece now by Dr. Kim Duramo called How to Consult Your Higher Self in Everything You Do. She begins by saying, instead of always having to look outside of ourselves for the answers, how do we tune in to our own inner wisdom? And then she talks a little bit about a client she's been working with, and the description of this woman's situation illustrates the kind of chaos I just talked about, this modern version of everything happening all at once with no sense of order, basically creating a sense of panic. This woman is dealing with a really challenging health problem, and she's telling Dr. Kim that she'll be really positive and optimistic about the journey she's on her road to healing, and then all of a sudden she'll read an email or see something on social media about the particular disease she's dealing with, and it all contains conflicting information about how to handle or treat it. And then her doctor will tell her something completely different, even from everything she's read or heard. And she ends up just ping-ponging back and forth emotionally, confused and in total fear. The way she feels this is what Dr. Kim says, the way she feels from moment to moment ends up being dictated by what's going on out there instead of how she feels when she connects with the serenity she feels when she goes inside. Okay, so again, perfect example. When she's connecting with her higher self by going in and down, she feels serenity and optimism. But when she starts looking and listening to things outside herself, she starts feeling chaotic and fearful. And she's no different from many of us. We do this all the time. We think we're solid in a certain way that we feel about something. We've made a decision to go in a certain direction and we feel good about it. And then some different information comes in from some outside source, and it just throws us into a tailspin. I know that has happened to me over and over again in the course of my life. So Dr. Kim has some suggestions for how to deal with that. Let's go back to what she was saying, talking about this client of hers. She said the way she feels moment to moment is being dictated by what's going on out there, instead of connecting with the serenity inside where her well-being is unconditional. All right, so that's point number one. When you look outside yourself for a solution to your chaos, to find your sense of peace and stability and order, It's always going to be conditional because everything that's outside of you is constantly subject to change. But when you're finding your order and your solution from the inside out, it is unconditional because your higher self, your divine Christ consciousness is always steady and ordered no matter what the outside circumstances are. That's why in the Bible story, Jesus was able to go to sleep in the bottom of the boat when all the other disciples were up on the surface panicking in the midst of the storm. Your higher self is never in panic, never, not even in the midst of a raging storm. So Dr. Kim's advice to us is first and foremost, go within. Remember, down and in, not up and out, in order to connect with the wisdom of your own higher self in the form of your divine Christ consciousness. And that's easy to forget when you're in the midst of the chaos and the panic. Once we've decided to do that, the next step is to get present in the now moment. Here's what she says about that. Your body can only live in the now. Receiving wisdom from your higher self can only be done in the present. It will never come from trying to remember what that thing was you heard or read about last year. That's coming from your mind, and it is not the wisdom from your higher or inner self. In pure awareness, there is no past. There is no future. There is nothing outside of you to find. What are you feeling and sensing right now? One way you can tell if information is coming from your mind or your awareness is by playing the light or heavy game. When you ask yourself, is this true for me? Know that your truth will always feel light, and the lie or what's not true for you will always feel heavy. I can't tell you what's the truth or a lie for you. I can only show you how to tune in and feel the answer for yourself. That was Dr. Kim. All right, so we're going within, and then we're staying present and finding our own awareness by how it feels to us in the present moment. The solution that is right for you, what will bring your life back into order from a state of chaos, will feel light and not heavy. Now, haven't you ever felt that sense of relief wash over you when you have been struggling with an issue and you finally know what you've got to do to fix it or to move on or whatever it is that you're needing to do? That's not always the easy thing. Sometimes it's hard. Maybe you've got to go apologize to someone or come clean about something you've done wrong. Maybe you need to pay some money back to someone or any number of things. It's not always easy, but when the right thing to do hits your consciousness, you know it, you feel it, and there's always that moment of relief like, ah. And as soon as you do it, as hard as it is, you feel better because it no longer feels heavy. The true solution will always make you feel light, even if it is difficult. Okay, so the next thing she talks about is the three things that all of us are. We are receptors, we receive, we are transmitters, and we are transmuters. And when we're talking about getting ourselves out of the fires of chaos, the first step is the one we've already talked about. You've got to be receptive to your own wisdom from within, from your higher self. And then, once you've done that, you've got some choices depending on what the particular situation calls for. And I'm going to give you two examples. Sometimes, to bring your life back into order, you've got to do some transmitting. Transmitting means you've got to speak to the chaos. I recently, for the first time in my life, sat down with a financial planner, and she explained something to me about finances that I had never understood or heard in this precise way before. She said, it's your job to tell every penny you bring in where to go, because if you don't, it will end up going nowhere, or you'll just look up at the end of the month or at the end of the year and not really know where it's all gone. Now, here's what she meant by that. You can't expect an inanimate object like money to form a plan for itself. Your money isn't just going to do the right thing all by itself. you have to tell it exactly where to go. Now, this probably sounds very elementary and simplistic to most of you, like, duh. But for me, this was somewhat of a revelation because I've never been a big budgeter. It's just, pay your bills, do the things you regularly do, pay your tithe, buy your gas, buy your groceries, and then the rest of the money left over is just kind of sitting in the account like a lump. And when you want or need something, you see if you've got enough, and if you do, you get it, and if you don't, you don't. That's basically been my financial plan. I remember having a conversation years ago with Marla Grizel, who is still on our accounting team here, and another woman, Camille Hyatt, who was a former staff member. And I remember that they were both appalled at the fact that that I never balanced my checkbook to the penny. I just didn't do it. They were just taken aback when I told them that. But the way I looked at it is, this was, back before computers and all. You could do everything online, and you had to actually put the amount, write it into your checkbook and subtract. And so because I hate numbers and cents, I would just always round all my entries up to the next dollar amount, so everything would just be zeros. But the consequence of that was I never really knew what my balance was, just a rough estimate, and this horrified them. But it just shows you how not budget-driven I am. But I have realized that I need a little more order in my life in that area. So I'm taking steps now to make that happen. I am 56, better late than never. But the way she described that really made sense to me when she said it. You have to tell every penny where to go because it's not going to do it on its own. If you don't, your finances end up in a little bit of chaos. It's the same thing with our energy. If you don't tell every bit of it where to go, because you create it all from the matter that's in the void, it's just going to end up in places that you don't know where it is. All right. So, transmitting, speaking to the chaos like you speak to your money, tell it where to go so there will be order. Let's go back for a moment to this idea of the void. The void, again, is a place where everything exists in its potential form. It is, as of yet, formless. And it's up to you to decide what form it's going to take by speaking to it. We always say around here that we are created by God, we are creative like God, and we are creating as God. Let's think about Genesis. In the beginning, the earth was without form and void, and darkness covered the face of the deep. What's the next line? And God said. God spoke. He transmitted. He said, let there be, and there was. That's how we create too. And it's up to us what we create as well as what we destroy. Sometimes there are some things in our lives that we've created that have resulted in a chaotic situation. And as we've also talked about before, we have the power to recreate those things. But sometimes that involves destroying what we created that's no longer working or perhaps never worked. Maybe it's one of those, it seemed like a good idea at the time things, but sometimes we've created some things that we need to send back into the void. I recently watched all 3 Hobbit movies that I had never watched before. I had read some of the books when I was younger, but I had never watched the movies, and I did the other weekend, and I was fascinated by one scene in particular in the 3rd movie, which was the Battle of the 5 Armies. And this scene was so powerful and so symbolic to me. There's a character in the movie named Galadriel. And I think she's an elf wizard. She's always with the other wizards, but she's also an elf. So whatever she is a force to be reckoned with. To me, she represents the divine feminine. There's a part in the movie where this dark force, known as the necromancer, which in case you don't know is one who conjures the spirits of the dead for the purposes of magically revealing the future or influencing the course of events. So this necromancer, this dark evil energy, had conjured up some dead spirits to help him defeat the wizards as well as Galadriel. And all the male wizards came out with their swords, and they did their thing. They did their masculine thing. And they had sent some of the spirits over the cliff and destroyed them. But then, it's like the moment in the scene was where Galadriel stood up. She'd been knocked down, and the movie, of course, wants you to think she's dead, but of course she's not. And when she stands up, the fire that's coming out of her eyes is so bright and powerful that even her fellow wizards are taken aback, and they just stand back and let her do what she's about to do. She has her mean business face on, Randy. That's we have an inside joke about my mom and a mean business outfit she used to wear whenever she felt like it just gave her a more powerful aura. So she would wear her, we would always say, uh-oh, Mom's got her mean business outfit on. So in this scene, when Galadriel stood up, she had her mean business face on. And so the necromancer is charging toward her and telling her how he's going to destroy everything in this really dark, monstrous voice. And she just holds her hand up. And these rays of light pour out of it, knocking him back as she says, "You have no power here. You are nameless, faceless, formless. Go back to the void from whence you came." And of course, he goes hurling back through a giant red hole, which closes behind him, and she falls to the ground, spent of her energy. End scene. Now, what I want you to do, though, is pay attention to the words she said. You are nameless, faceless, formless. You have no power here. Go back to the void from whence you came. That sounds, when I heard it, that also kind of ticked off in my mind. That sounds a whole lot like what Bishop Pearson says when he describes us in our eternal form. You know, he often says our spirits, our eternal selves, what we've been talking about today as our higher self, is nameless, shameless, skinless, sinless. It sounds very similar because it is. They both come from the void, where everything is formless, where everything is powerless. It's neither good or bad until we, with our divine creative ability given to us by God, decide what it will be and tell it what it is and where to go. We can create order in our lives with our words, with our intentions, with our actions and choices. We can give form and a name and skin to our higher self and let it be what comes out of the void and become the driving force of our life. Or we can create something less orderly and more chaotic that we have to send back to the void to be reformed and reshaped into something better. So that is my example of what Dr. Kim terms as transmitting. Sometimes we have to do that in our lives with the energy. The other option we have to deal with our chaos is to transmute it. Dr. Kim said we are all three things: receptors, receivers, transmitters, speakers, creators, and transmuters. We've talked about how we do the first two, so now let's move on to the third. So in review, to transmit is to broadcast or send out, like we just talked about. Sometimes you have to speak to the chaotic situations in your life rather forcefully because that's what the moment calls for. Remember, we talked about tuning into your own awareness in the present moment to find your solution. So transmitting is one of those solutions, and sometimes that's what you have to do. Transmuting is another solution, okay? And transmuting means to change in form or substance. So transmitting is basically just sending it back and letting the void deal with the transmutation process, getting it away from you. Transmuting takes it a step further. Andrew Martin talks about something that he calls not being a spiritual leaf blower. He says, stop banishing stuff. And actually, I switched that word there. He was a little more strong in the way he described it. He said, stop banishing stuff. Don't be a spiritual leaf blower. That is the epitome of spiritual laziness and of you not being willing to do your own work. Essentially, you're just blowing the energy across the street to be someone else's responsibility to clean up or deal with. We are all one. There's nowhere to send it. It's the same as dumping toxic waste in the ocean and then going swimming in it, thinking you won't be affected. One of the major aspects of a mature spiritual life is accountability, being responsible for the things you have created. Rather than banishing it and sending it away, heal it and then send it to its perfect place. Wrap it in love and light along with yourself, and then forgive it and bless it. Tell it you are grateful for its presence and for whatever purpose it has served. Then visualize it leaving your energy field and cut the cord. Now, that's a very different process than just commanding something to leave you, and both are necessary. I believe that this is a step higher than that, than just the transmitting. He continues, ask your higher self to guide it back to its perfect and most useful place. Don't make your stuff someone else's problem and responsibility. These aspects of us are like lost children who need to be guided back where they belong. Sending it away unhealed is like poisoning the collective well we all drink from. So, okay, this is basically just saying, don't stop in the middle of the process. Yes, you can send your creations back. Sometimes you need to do that forcefully, like Galadriel did, because it's just become too powerful and has caused too much chaos in your life. But if you can, try to get to that place of spiritual maturity where you are able to, as Andrew said, wrap it in love and light and forgiveness. Heal it, transmute it before you send it back into the void. And make sure that that's what you're doing, not just blowing it away from you to make it someone else's problem to deal with. To me, that is the true meaning of things that are born in the fires of chaos. They're actually reborn through this power of transmutation, another word for which is redemption. They go in one way and they come out another. Of you, not just the void. What this is basically saying is you can either send it into the void and let the void do it, but eventually you need to get to the place where you yourself are a void, as it were, and you can transmute it yourself. And in your life, no one is in charge of that process but you. Everything you need is already inside you. You will never find a true and lasting solution outside of yourself. I want to leave you today with a quote from our own David Michael Searcy. And this quote, I don't know if it was original to him, he can tell me or not, but it is, divine order holds all things together and works harmoniously well with divine chaos. I'm going to say that again. Divine order holds all things together and works harmoniously well with divine chaos. It is amazing that he texted that to me yesterday and he had no idea what I was going to be speaking about today, and I was already in the midst of preparing it. That's how Spirit works. I love that quote because I think it represents the highest level of spiritual maturity, recognizing that both order and chaos, much like both darkness and light, are working together for our good. So don't be afraid of the chaos, and don't be afraid to speak to the chaos. It isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just the birthplace of something new. And what that something new is completely yours to create. Amen? Amen. All right. Let's see if we have, oh yes, I have been sent some shouts out. I noticed that there were several birthdays this week of people who are our Faithful Connection attenders. I believe it was Miss Callie's birthday this week, and Miss Doreen's. Happy birthday to both of you again. They're both watching this morning. Reverend John Scott, Sheila Warner, my dad, Pastor Don Paulk, Mary Hayes, Miss Bobby, Pastor Gloria and Howard Harris, Sheila Smith, Justina, Murphy Pauls, Leslie Harmon, Elaine Jeffries, Reverend David Michael Searcy, who is here with us, Glenna McKenzie, Rosaline Cooper, Kisa Walker Heron, Richard Copeland, and Erica Bryant. Thank you for sharing this time with me today. Don't forget to join us tomorrow night online at 7 p.m. for our continuing series, Stillness Speaks, with my brother, Pastor D.E., and we will also see you on Sunday. I love you. Have a peaceful week.